If you've ever tasted Sambal Oelek, you already know it brings the heat. But do you know why? Some factories process over 20 tons of red chilies every single day. That's crazy. But it's not just the chili that gives it that kick. So what else is in it? Stick around to see exactly how Sambal Oelek is made and what it's made of. What is Sambal Oelek and what are the main ingredients? Before we dive into machines and chili mountains, let's first talk about what Sambal Oelek actually is. You may have seen it in your fridge door, in the condiments aisle at your favorite grocery store, or maybe you've only tasted it at your favorite Thai place. Well, the name might sound complicated, but it's pretty straightforward once you break it down. The word sambal just means chili-based sauce, and Oelek or Oelek actually refers to the old-school Indonesian method of grinding something by hand using a stone mortar and pestle. No fancy blender, no food processor, just some elbow grease and time. Back in the day, that's how it was done. People would grab fresh red chilies, throw in a little salt, maybe a splash of vinegar, and grind it all up until they had a bright red paste. That packed some serious heat. Now, don't be fooled by how basic that sounds, because even though it only has a few ingredients, every part of it has a purpose. The red chilies bring in that bold heat and color. The salt not only seasons the sauce, but helps with preservation, and the vinegar adds tanginess while also keeping things shelf-stable. That's the beauty of Sambal Oelek. It doesn't try to be fancy. No garlic, no sugar, no thickening agents, and no weird preservatives you can't pronounce. Just pure chili flavor. But here's the thing, making it by hand works great if you're cooking for your family. But what if you're trying to make thousands of jars of it in a day? That's where factories come in. And while the basic recipe stays the same, the process to make it on a massive scale is a whole different ballgame. Imagine replacing your little mortar and pestle with industrial machines the size of your kitchen. That's how they manage to keep up with the demand and still deliver a product that tastes just as close to the original. So in case you thought Sambal Oelek was some complicated hot sauce with a secret ingredient, now you know it's about as honest as sauces get. Chili, salt, vinegar, and a whole lot of passion. Simple, fiery, and straight to the point. And as we move forward, you'll see exactly how these ingredients come together on a much, much larger scale in huge factories. Trust me, you're going to love what comes next. It all starts with the chilies. Now, let's get into the real action. If Sambal Oelek had a heartbeat, it would be the chili. It's the first ingredient, the most important one, and without it, there wouldn't be anything to make. So naturally, the process begins on the farms. But these aren't just small gardens with a few plants. We're talking about acres and acres of chili fields where thousands of peppers grow under the sun every single day. Factories usually partner with local and international farms to source the perfect kind of red chili. And here's something interesting. A lot of commercial producers actually use red jalapenos for their Sambal Oelek, not the small bird's eye chilies you might expect. Why? Because red jalapenos give that ideal balance of heat, color, and flavor. They're spicy, but not overwhelmingly so, and they have enough body to make a nice thick paste. For example, Huy Fong Foods, one of the biggest names in the game, goes through about 20 tons of these chilies every single day when the season is in full swing. That's a mountain of chilies. Imagine the smell. Once the chilies are harvested, they're shipped straight to the factory, where the first thing that happens is a deep clean. Even if the chilies look pristine, they've still been out in the fields picking up dust, dirt, and maybe a few bugs. So they go through a giant washing system. It's kind of like a chili car wash. The peppers are tumbled around in water, rinsed several times, and sometimes even scrubbed to make sure nothing unwanted gets into the final product. After they're squeaky clean, the chilies go through a sorting line. This is where damaged or underripe ones get removed. Only the best chilies move on to the next stage. Think of it as a spicy audition. If you don't look good or taste good, you're out. Quality control is super important because bad chilies can mess up the whole batch. And when you're dealing with 20 tons a day, that's a lot of sauce on the line. Then comes the grinding. And while the old method involved pounding with a pestle, factories use machines that can crush thousands of pounds of chilies per hour. But these industrial grinders don't turn the chilies into a smooth liquid. Instead, they keep that classic coarse texture that gives Sambal Oelek its unique look and feel. The seeds are still in there, and so are the little chunks of chili skin. That's on purpose. It's part of what makes this sauce stand out from others like sriracha or hot pepper puree. But grinding is just one part of the puzzle. Up next, the crushed chilies get mixed with salt and vinegar to turn that mash into something you can scoop out of a jar. We'll talk about that next, but for now, just remember that every bottle of Sambal Oelek starts with a fresh, fiery pepper that's been carefully cleaned, sorted, and crushed with care. It might look simple, but there's a lot going on behind that heat. Adding salt and vinegar. Alright, so the chilies are ground and looking nice and fiery. Now comes a key moment that really defines what Sambal Oelek tastes like. It's time to add salt and vinegar. You may think this part is just about tossing in a pinch of this and a splash of that, but in reality it's way more controlled and scientific than it sounds. Let's start with the salt. And yes, I know it might seem like a basic ingredient, but it's actually doing a lot of heavy lifting here. First of all, it brings out the natural flavor of the chilies. Without salt, the paste would taste flat or just one-dimensional. But with just the right amount, you get a balanced, savory kick that ties the whole sauce together. And it's not just about taste. Salt also helps preserve the sambal, keeping it fresh for longer and helping prevent spoilage. Next up is the vinegar. Because this stuff is the real MVP when it comes to keeping Sambal Oelek shelf stable. Most factories use distilled white vinegar because it's clean, consistent, and does the job without messing with the chili flavor. The acidity in vinegar lowers the pH of the chili paste, which makes it hard for bad bacteria or mold to grow. So yeah, that tangy note you taste, it's doing more than just waking up your tongue. But factories don't just eyeball these ingredients. They use exact formulas and often run batch tests to make sure every single tube or jar tastes just like the last one. Too much vinegar, and the sambal might taste sour or overpowering. Too little, and it might not be safe to store. So it's all about getting the right balance. In some factories, this stage is where decisions are made to stick to the classic recipe or tweak things a bit for different markets. For example, some versions of Sambal Oelek made for export might include preservatives like potassium sorbate or sodium bisulfite to extend shelf life even further. Some might add a touch of sugar to slightly soften the burn and appeal to a wider audience. But traditional Sambal Oelek is all about keeping things clean and minimal. Just red chilies, salt, and vinegar. That's it. And don't forget, the type of vinegar used can affect flavor too. While white vinegar is the standard, some smaller producers might experiment with rice vinegar or cane vinegar, especially in small batch operations. That being said, if you're buying the big-name stuff like Hui Fong, what you're getting is probably a tried and tested formula that hasn't changed in decades. So yeah, this stage may look simple from the outside, but behind the scenes, it's all precision, consistency, and keeping the soul of Sambal Oelek alive. And without these ingredients, that little jar in your fridge just won't be the same. Mixing and homogenization. Alright, so the salt and vinegar are in, the flavors are locked and loaded, but we're not done yet. Now it's time to mix it all together. And when you're making thousands of pounds of chili paste at a time, you better believe this is not just some guy with a spoon stirring a giant pot. This is where the factory's big industrial mixers come into play. These machines are designed to handle huge volumes of thick, chunky chili paste without missing a beat. Think of them like turbocharged kitchen blenders, but way bigger and way more precise. Their job is to make sure that every spoonful of Sambal Oelek has the exact same flavor and texture from top to bottom. So why is mixing so important? Well, imagine if you just dumped in the salt and vinegar and didn't mix it properly. You'd end up with some parts of the batch being way too salty and others tasting totally bland. Or worse, some jars might not have enough vinegar to keep them safe for long-term storage. That's not just bad for taste, it's a food safety issue. Now, these mixers run at just the right speed to fold everything together without breaking down the texture too much. Sambal Oelek is supposed to be a bit chunky. It's not a smooth puree, so the factory teams have to be extremely careful here. Too much mixing and you lose that nice chili texture. Not enough, and the flavors won't be evenly spread out. After the initial mixing, the paste often goes through a process called homogenization, This is kind of like taking the mixing one step further. Homogenizers break down any remaining clumps or inconsistencies in the mixture to make sure the texture is smooth but still a bit rustic, just the way it's supposed to be. It also helps suspend the vinegar and salt throughout the chili paste so you don't get separation over time. And guess what? Temperature control is important here too. As the chili paste gets mixed and homogenized, the machines make sure it doesn't overheat. Heat could alter the flavor of the chilies or make the final product taste cooked, which isn't what anyone wants. Sambal Oelek should taste raw and fresh, like it was just crushed a minute ago. The operators running this equipment are trained to know exactly how long to mix, at what speed, and at what temperature. Every detail matters. Even the shape and speed of the mixing blades are chosen to keep the chili paste chunky but consistent. Once this step is complete, you've got yourself a beautifully blended, punchy, and evenly seasoned chili paste. From here, the Sambal Oelek undergoes quality control checks. Samples are taken to test for flavor, consistency, and microbial safety. This ensures that every jar or bottle meets the company's standards and is safe for consumption. Once the quality checks are complete, the Sambal Oelek is ready for packaging. It's filled into jars or bottles using automated machines. The containers are sealed to prevent contamination, and they are labeled with product information. After packaging, the products are boxed and distributed. And that's how the spicy jar of Sambal Oelek made its way to your store shelf. But what do you think about the process? Let us know in the comments below. If you want to learn the secrets behind how everyday products are made, subscribe to our channel, and we'll see you in the next one.